Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, guys. Welcome back, or welcome in general. Today we will be talking about the Unabomber, or also known as Ted Kaczynski. So, Ted was born May 22nd, 1942, in Chicago, Illinois, to Theodore Kaczynski and Wanda Dombeck. From first to fourth grade, Ted attended Sherman Elementary School, where administrators described him as healthy and well adjusted. In 1952, he and his family moved to Evergreen Park, Illinois, where Ted transferred to Evergreen Park Central Junior High School. After testing scored his IQ at 167, that's high, he skipped the sixth grade. Ted later described this as a pivotal event. Previously, had been socializing with his peers, but after skipping ahead, didn't feel he fit in with the older kids. Ted attended Evergreen Park Community High School, where he excelled academically. He played trombone in the marching band and was a member of the mathematics, biology, coin, and German clubs. In 1996, a fellow classmate stated he was never really seen as a person, as an individual personality. He was always regarded as a walking brain, so to speak. During this period, Ted had become intensely interested in mathematics, spending hours studying and solving advanced problems. He later skipped the 11th grade, and by attending summer school, he graduated at the age of 15. While still only being 15, he was encouraged to apply to Harvard University, which he was accepted and entered Harvard on a scholarship in 1958 at age 16. Ted matriculated at Harvard as a mathematics prodigy. During his first year, Ted lived at 8 Prescott Street, which was intended to provide a small, intimate living space for the youngest incoming students. For the following 3 years, he lived at Eliot House. His housemates and other students described Ted as a very intelligent but socially reserved person. He earned his Bachelor's of Art degree in mathematics from Harvard in 1962. In 1962, Ted enrolled in the University of Michigan, where he earned his master's and doctoral degrees in mathematics between 1964 and 1967. Michigan wasn't his first choice for postgraduate education, but they were the only place that offered him an annual grant of $2,310, equivalent to $23,268 in 2023, and a teaching post. At Michigan, Ted specialized in complex analysis, specifically for geometric function theory. Sidetrack. For periods of weeks in 1966, Ted experienced intense sexual fantasies of being female and decided to undergo gender transition. He arranged to meet with a psychiatrist but changed his mind last minute in the waiting room and decided to talk about other things instead. Afterwards, enraged, he considered killing the psychiatrist and other people whom he hated. Ted described this episode as a major turning point in his life. His words, "I felt disgusted about what my uncontrolled sexual cravings almost led me to do, and I felt humiliated, and I violently hated the psychiatrist. Just then, there came a major turning point in my life. Like a phoenix, I burst from the ashes of my despair to a glorious new hope." In late 1967, 25-year-old Ted became an acting assistant professor at the University of California, Berkeley, where he taught mathematics. He assumed the position as the youngest assistant professor in history of the university. By September 1968, Ted was formally appointed to an assistant internship and that he was on track for tenure. From a side, Ted's teaching evaluations suggested he wasn't well liked by his students, and he seemed uncomfortable teaching. Without any explanation, he resigned on June 30th, 1969. In 1971, Ted moved to a remote cabin he had built outside Lincoln, Montana, where he could live a simple life with little money and without electricity or running water. He would work odd jobs and receive significant financial support from his family. Ted's original goal was to become self-efficient so he could live anonymously. Starting in 1975, Ted performed acts of sabotage, including arson and booby trapping against developments near his cabin. Ted was visited multiple times by his father, who was impressed by his wilderness skills. Ted's father was diagnosed with lung cancer in 1990, and October 2nd, 1990, he shot and killed himself in his home. Now, on to the bombings. And this stuff was like out of control and crazy. Doing the research on this, I was like mind blown on how it was even able to go on that long. So, between 1978 to 1995, Ted mailed or hand delivered a series of increasingly sophisticated bombs that killed 3 people and injured 23. 16 bombs were attributed to Ted. While bombs varied widely through the years, many contained the initials FC, which Ted later said stood for Freedom Club. He purposely left misleading clues in the devices and took extreme care in preparing them to avoid leaving fingerprints. Ted's first bomb was directed to Buckley Christ, a professor of materials engineering at Northwestern University. On May 25, 1978, a package bearing Berkeley's return address was found in a parking lot of the University of Illinois located in Chicago. The package was returned to Buckley, who was suspicious because he had not sent it. So he contacted campus police officer Terry Marker, whom had opened the package, which then exploded and caused minor injuries. Ted's second bomb was sent nearly a year later at the same place, Northwestern University. The bomb was concealed in a cigar box and left on a table. It caused minor injuries to graduate student John Harris, who had opened it. In 1979, a bomb was placed in a cargo hold of American Airline Flight 444. A faulty timing mechanism prevented the bomb from exploding, but it released smoke, which caused the pilots to carry out an emergency landing. Ted then sent his next bomb to the president of United Airlines, Percy Wood. Percy only received cuts and burns over his body. In 1981, a package reading the return address of a Brigham Young University professor of electrical engineering, Leroy Berenson. The package was found in a hallway at the University of Utah. After, it was brought to the campus police, then defused by a bomb squad. Thank God for that. In May, the following year, a bomb was sent to Patrick Fisher, a professor of computer science at Vanderbilt University. The package exploded when Patrick's secretary, Janet Smith, opened it. She received injuries to her face and arms. Ted's next 2 bombs targeted people at the University of California. The first, in July of 1982, caused serious injuries to engineering professor Mr. Angelakis. Nearly 3 years later, in May 1985, John Hauser, a graduate student and captain of the U.S. Air Force, lost 4 fingers and vision in 1 eye due to the bomb. A bomb was sent to Boeing Company in Auburn, Washington. That one was defused by a bomb squad the following month. Thank God for that one, too. In November 1985, Professor James McConnell and research assistant Nicholas were both severely injured after Nicholas opened the mail bomb to James. In late 1985, a nail and splinter loaded bomb, which that one, I was surprised. Like, how did he make that one? It was in a parking lot of a computer store in Sacramento, California, and it killed 38-year-old owner Hugh Scruton. February 20th, 1987, a bomb disguised as a piece of lumber injured Gary Wright in a parking lot of a computer store in Salt Lake City, Utah. Nerves in his left arm were severed, and at least 200 pieces of shrapnel entered his body. I want to know how he survived. How? Ted was spotted while planting the LSC Utah bomb, which led to a widely distributed sketch of a suspect as a hooded man with a mustache and aviator sunglasses. In 1993, after a 6-year break, Ted mailed a bomb to the home of Charles Epstein from the University of California in San Francisco. Charles lost several fingers upon opening the package. In the same weekend, Ted mailed a bomb to David Galerner, a computer science professor at Yale University. David lost sight in one eye, hearing in one ear, and a bit of his right hand. In 1994, Bernsen Misteller executive Thomas Moser was killed after opening a mail bomb sent to his home in New Jersey. In a letter to the New York Times, Ted wrote he sent the bomb to Thomas because of his work of repairing the public image of Exxon. This was followed by the 1995 murder of Gilbert Murray, president of the Timber Industry of California Forest Association, by a mail bomb addressed to the previous president, William Dennison, who was retired. Now on to the manifesto. In 1995, Ted mailed several letters to the media outlets outlining his goals and demanding a major newspaper print of his 35,000-word essay, Industrial Society and Its Future, dubbed the Unabomber Manifesto by the FBI. He stated he would desist from terrorism if this demand was met. Ted used a typewriter to write his manuscript, capitalizing entire words to emphasize in lieu of italics. He always referred to himself as either we or FC, Freedom Club, though there was no evidence of anyone else working with him. Donald Foster analyzed the writing at the request of Ted's defense team in 1996 and noted that it contained irregular spelling and hyphenations along with others. This led Donald to conclude that Ted was the author. Ted argued that the erosion of human freedom is a natural product of an industrial society because, in his words, the system has to regulate human behavior closely in order to function, and that the reform of the system was impossible. Ted predicted that the system would break down if it can't achieve significant control, and that it's likely the issue would be decided within the next 40 to 100 years. A significant portion of the document is dedicated to discussing political leftism as a manifestation of a set of related psychological types, with Ted attributing the prevalence and intensity of leftism in society as both negative symptoms of psychological pressures induced by technological conditions as well as an obstacle to the formation of an effective anti-tech revolution. Ted believed that over-socialization and feelings of inferiority are primarily drivers of leftism. Ted added that the types of movement he had envisioned must be anti-leftism and refrain from collaborations with leftists. Now on to the investigation. Because of what was used to make the mail bombs, U.S. postal inspectors who initially had responsibility for the case labeled the suspect as the junkyard bomber. In 1997, an FBI lead task force that included 125 agents was formed. The task force grew to more than 150 full-time personnel. Minute analysis of components of the bombs provided little use in identifying the suspect. In 1980, Chief Agent John Douglas from the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit issued a psychological profile of the unidentified bomber, but later that was discarded in 1983. The Unabomber Task Force set up a toll-free telephone hotline to take calls related to the investigation with a $1 million reward for anyone who could provide information leading to the Unabomber's arrest. Before the publication of Industrial Society and Its Future, Ted's brother David was encouraged by his wife to follow up on suspicions that Ted was the Unabomber. David was dismissive at first, but he took the idea more seriously after reading the manifesto a week after it was published, September of 1995. He searched through old family papers and discovered letters dating back to the 1970s that Ted had sent the newspaper to protest the abuse of technology, using phrases similar to what was in the manifesto. Geographical information and parts of the wording from the manifesto that were released convinced David's wife to urge him to read it. After the manifesto was published, the FBI received thousands of tips. While the FBI was reviewing new leads, David hired a private investigator, Susan Swanson, in Chicago to discreetly investigate Ted's activities. David later hired a Washington, D.C. attorney, Tony Bashagli, to organize findings acquired by Susan and contact the FBI. In early 1996, an investigator working for Tony contacted former FBI hostage negotiator Clinton Van Zandt. Tony asked Clinton to compare the manifesto to the typewritten copies of the handwritten letters David had received from Ted. Clinton's initial analysis determined that there was a greater than a 60% chance that the same person had written the manifesto, though Clinton's second analysis team determined a higher likelihood. Combined with the facts gleaned from the bombings and Ted's life, the analysis provided the basis for an affidavit signed by the head of investigation, Terry Turchi, for a search warrant. Though David tried to remain anonymous, he was soon identified. Within a few days, an FBI agent team was dispatched to interview David and his wife with their attorney from D.C. During the interview, David provided the letters in their original envelopes, allowing the task force to use the postmark dates to add more detail to the timeline of Ted's activities. David had received reassurance from the FBI that he'd remain anonymous so Ted wouldn't find out who had turned him in, but unfortunately, in April 1996, CBS News leaked his identity. The arrest. The FBI arrested Ted at his cabin April 3, 1996. The search revealed a cache of bomb components, 40,000 handwritten journal pages that included bomb-making experiments and the description of the Unabomber's crimes, and one live bomb. They also found what appeared to be the original typed manuscript of Industrial Society and its Future. The Unabomber had been noted as the most expensive investigation in FBI history at the time, spending over $50 million throughout the course of the investigation. A federal grand jury convicted Ted in June of 1996 on 10 counts of illegally transporting, mailing, and using bombs. Ted's lawyers, Michael Donahoe and Judy Clark, attempted to enter an insanity defense to avoid the death penalty, but Ted refused. January 8, 1996, he dismissed his lawyers and hired Tony Serra as his counsel. Tony had agreed not to use the insanity defense and instead promised to base a defense on Ted's anti-technology views. After the request was unsuccessful, Ted tried to kill himself, but failed. Sally Johnson, a psychiatrist who examined Ted, concluded he suffered from paranoid schizophrenia. On January 21, 1998, Ted was declared competent to stand trial by Sally despite the psychiatric diagnosis. Ted pled guilty to all charges on January 22, 1998, accepting life in prison without any possibility of parole. He later tried to withdraw this plea, claiming the judge had coerced him, but the request was denied. Last and not least, the incarceration and death. Nearly immediately after the conviction, Ted began serving his 8 life sentences at ADX Florence, a supermax prison in Florence, Colorado. Early in Ted's imprisonment, he befriended Ramsey Youssef and Timothy McVeigh, the perpetrators of the 1993 World Trade Center bombing and 1995 Oklahoma City bombing. They formed a friendship up until Timothy's execution in 2001. In March 2021, Ted was diagnosed with rectal cancer. In December of 2021, he was transferred to a federal medical center in North Carolina. Ted received bi-weekly chemotherapy until March of 2023, when he started refusing treatment due to the bad side effects and the low probability of recovery. At 12:23 a.m. on June 10th, 2023, Ted was found unresponsive with no pulse after hanging himself with a shoelace on a handicapped rail. He was later pronounced dead at 8:07 a.m. later that morning at Duke University Hospital. Hey guys, I just want to say thanks for watching if you made it this far. And I also want to say I am sorry for all the mistakes in the names. I don't know how to read, so but I still hope it was enjoyable. And another thing that I wanted to add into this is I am planning on one Sunday a month. It's going to be called Special Sunday. I am going to post a paranormal story or anything similar to that. So let me know your guys' thoughts on that, and maybe we can talk about a day on when to do it. So, yeah, thank you.